Hey there. Thanks for joining us today. We are excited about today's guests. But first, if you haven't already, would you head over to Facebook or Instagram and search Blended Family Breakthrough so that you can join us for some simple weekly encouragement and discover some of our most popular and impactful episodes from the past several years. You don't want to miss out on that. So again, search Blended Family Breakthrough on Facebook and Instagram to stay updated with us.
Absolutely. So we're wondering, have you ever had a disagreement about money? Maybe you just thought, well, duh, what couple doesn't argue about money? It's true that most couples have financial tension at some point along the way, but for blended couples, it can often be pretty complicated.
Yep. And that's why we're super excited to have two experts on the show today.
Woohoo.
We're welcoming back Ron Deal, who is one of the most widely read and viewed experts on blended families in the United States. He's the director of Family Life Blended for Family Life. He's the founder of Smart Step Families and the author and consulting editor on the Smart Step Family series of books, including the Smart Step Family Guide to Financial Planning, which is what he's helping us focus on today.
Right.
Now, Ron's a licensed marriage and family therapist, a popular conference speaker, and the host of the Family Life Blended podcast. He and his wife, Nan, have 3 sons and 1 fabulous daughter-in-law, and they live in Little Rock, Arkansas.
We love Ron. Now, we're always grateful to have Ron on the show, and joining him today is a new guest here on Blended Family Breakthrough, Greg Pettis.
Yay!
Now, Greg co-authored the Smart Step Family Guide to Financial Planning with Ron, and he's a certified financial planner with over 36 years of experience in the financial services industry. By using a collaborative planning approach combined with legal and tax expert, he provides comprehensive, in-depth, written financial plans to blended families.
That's right.
He has also worked with hundreds of successful business owners to implement business transition strategies to help bring wealth transfer and estate plans to completion.
That's right. Now, Ron and Greg are also just great down-to-earth guys.
They're fun.
And we are honored that they chose to spend this time with us to bring value to you today. So be sure you grab a notepad because you're going to want to take some notes as Ron and Greg share more about how Smart Step families approach their financial planning. And we'll hop into that interview just on the other side of the intro. Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Well, hey, Ron. Hey, Greg. Thank you so much for joining us. Ron, I know to welcome you back. You've been on several times with us. But Greg, we're excited to have you join us for the first time here on the show. And
thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I wonder just for a moment, I know, people have gotten emails and they've seen show notes and they see your bio and all that. But I wonder if maybe we could start with Greg kind of doing a little introduction and sharing a bit about kind of his background and where he comes from. And that might help the audience.
Sure. Well, I am a certified financial planner with over 30 years in the business.
Yeah.
Which means I hope that I'm a good listener to people's goals and their financial expectations and concerns.
Sure.
I work with a team of advisors. So whenever I'm working with a client, I'm also working with their attorney and CPA and any other trusted advisor that's on the team. I produce written, objective, comprehensive financial plans.
Yeah.
So that is something that I enjoy doing for a number of different scenarios of individuals and businesses.
Okay.
Awesome.
Wow.
Great. Wow. There's a lot of wisdom behind that little introduction there. So we're very excited to have you joining us, Greg. Ron, maybe you could give a little update as well. What have you been up to the last 6 months or so since you've been on?
Well, just continuing to try to talk to blended families and help community professionals, therapists, churches, leaders understand step families better so that they can encourage the step families in their corner of the world.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much to both of you for being here. Well, I wonder if we could hop into this resource, the Smart Step Family Guide to Financial Planning. So Ron and Greg and David Edwards co-authored this book. And I wonder, Ron, could you maybe share what prompted the three of you to dive in and write this book?
Well, it's really a great story, especially since Greg is with us today. I get to say it with him here, and he can add some color commentary. Many years ago, I want to say 20 years ago at least, I did a seminar where Greg lived in Illinois, and we ended up having dinner, he and his wife, and when the seminar was over that weekend, and had a conversation. I said, "So what do you do?" And he goes, "Well, I'm a certified financial planner." And I think he or I jokingly, one of us said, "We should write a book together." And we just sort of left that out there. And then a number of years later, I was doing a little work, writing an article on money, and I reached out to Greg, and he contributed some ideas. And then for my book, The Smart Step Family, we did a revision at one point in 2014 and fully revised and expanded that book. And there was a whole chapter on money, and Greg was a significant part of that. So bit by bit, we started collaborating, working together, and every time we would, I realized how brilliant he was. And so we finally said, all right, we got to do it. We got to write a whole book on this subject. And I said, "Do you know anybody who really specializes in estate planning?" He said, "I got a buddy." And so the three of us put our heads together. I like to say I just sort of helped bring the project together and added a little understanding of blended family dynamics and layered that on top of their money principles and money management abilities. And it's really a beautiful integration. There is not a book for step-family couples like this anywhere. Most of the other books that are out there will just talk about money or just talk about step-family relationships and dynamics, but really not a full merger of all of those ideas. And that's what the Smart Step Family Guide to Financial Planning is.
I love that. I agree. I agree. I've read it twice personally, all the way through, and it is a very unique book. So appreciate that. Greg, what would you add to that story?
Well, I would say he's being humble about this whole brilliant thing, he said. But like epoxy, he was at least half of the cement that held us together.
Okay. All right.
I'll take that.
Oh, that's great. What a cool journey. Early on in the book, you guys share, our objective is to help you make money an asset to your relationship, not a liability.
Love that.
I love to kind of start there and think about what could be some hidden or unexpected ways that money tends to become a liability for a blended family couple.
Guys, I got two immediate thoughts, all right?
Yeah.
And the first one is, let me just say, a week ago, I was sitting down with a group of people, and we were just having some conversation, and somebody said, "So what do you do, Ron?" And I told them what I did, and somebody said, "Well, here in my world," they were an attorney, "here's the question I want to know. What do you think about prenuptial agreements for couples becoming blended?" Like, right out of the gate, he said, "What do you think about that?" And everybody in the room was like, "Oh, yeah, we hate those." And it was like there was so much negativity around that whole idea.
Wow.
I thought, how interesting. And I began to share with them the whole idea of a togetherness agreement, that money can be used to plan for the demise of your relationship, or you can use money to bring it together. We can unpack that togetherness agreement idea that's in this book here as we go forward. But again, it was the negativity that was really struck me. That was with a group of professionals. What I can tell you is, working now for 35 years with couples, is that couples in blended families forming, dating, or already married often avoid this money topic because they too inherently feel like there's some negativity here and we just rather not go there.
Yeah.
So we're just going to pretend like it doesn't exist, and we're not going to have that conversation. Our research shows 25% of couples who are dating / engaged, forming a blended family, talk about money, which means 75% of couples don't.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Wow.
And we need to help them not be afraid. You don't have to be afraid of this subject.
That's
sure.
the key. Yeah, the
And-
underlying fear.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And to the point of values, I mean, money is a tool. It just serves what we value.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a couple's values are not synchronized on the same page and not fully disclosed, so that brings in not having secret financial matters, secret accounts, secret spending. I think those two things, alignment of values and total disclosure of all financial facts in a relationship will help assuage, really dysfunction.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? You said, I love the way you put that, Greg. Transparency of those financial facts, but these are facts that can also be really emotional, right?
Yeah, they certainly can, especially when a lot of couples go into the relationship using money to maybe help guilt feelings. You know, they're motivated by some guilt. Maybe I need to do more for my children because, and maybe I need to do this because, and so the guilt factor can be alleviated or mitigated if we discuss how we feel about money and what does it mean to me. Is it security or is it status? Am I trying to control people with my money? Am I content?
Right.
Those are questions to be asked.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a trust issue there as well. Of course, if you can't have full disclosure, that's going to breed a certain amount of distrust over time, which of course is never healthy in any relationship, especially when you're coming in with blended family dynamics where you possibly had some distrust in your previous relationship and now it gets all stirred up again.
Kim, I think you nailed it right there. It was interesting, this conversation I had with the professionals last week. One attorney spoke up. Once the dialogue started, another guy spoke up and said, I won't even marry a couple. I won't even talk to them unless they're going to do a prenuptial agreement. And so we paused for a minute and I sort of chased that with him. What's behind that? What's your experience of marriage? And sure enough, there's a story there. Marriage doesn't work out well. You ought to live in fear of it. It cannot be trusted. Partners cannot be trusted. The future cannot be trusted. All of which adds up to we've got to cover ourselves because the worst is about to happen. That fear that you talked about, it just gets a hold of people. And what I want our listeners to just ponder for a minute is if you can relate to any of that, then the next question is, okay, so what are you doing out of fear to self-protect? That inadvertently adds more distrust to your partner about you. I mean, you're sending a signal at that point that says, I don't trust you. You shouldn't trust me because I'm looking out for me, not necessarily us. And wow, see, that just incrementally reduces the usness of your relationship. And you add that up 1,000 times, over some time. And all of a sudden, everybody is backtracking, leaning out rather than leaning in. And you're not just, this is not money anymore. This is marriage.
Right.
Yeah. It's going to bleed out into lots of other areas.
Yeah. What would you add to what Ron just said, Greg?
The togetherness agreement has been a cornerstone of our book. And I think and many of the attorneys I work with do see the merit of having a legal agreement that's written prior to a marriage, a second or third marriage, but it doesn't have to be so antagonistic. And I've seen attorneys actually confide in me. I hate writing those things. It's a lose-lose proposition. And when they walk out of my office, I just feel so bad because someone really is hurting. And I said, well, then let's take that prenup and turn it upside down, shake the animosity out of that thing, and let's pump some care and concern for the party that's signing, away this or that asset. I agree not to receive any inheritance from his family. I agree not to have the business. I agree not. Let's put something in there that brings equity in a kind way, and our book goes into detail. I won't dive too deep into the weeds, but, for example, no, you're not going to receive the business that I've promised my previous biological children, but instead I'll create a trust for you and place $1 million of life insurance in it for your well-being.
Yeah.
Right.
Or no, your mother can't live with us for long-term care reasons, like you promised, but we're going to seek out some counsel about, long-term care insurance and so forth, and look into ways that we can both contribute to her well-being without her having to live with us. So, these things can work together for both parties.
Right.
Mike and Kim, the beautiful thing about what Greg just said there is, again, shaking all the animosity out and adding care and concern changes the equation of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to foster togetherness rather than what we're going to do if we ever separate. It's two totally different things. It's interesting when you're talking about financial, having provision, and you feel like the future is secure. We say financial security, right? But what he just talked about was emotional safety. That's pumping safety into the relationship by showing that you're going to care for the other person financially. Yeah. It's the care and concern that changes the game.
That makes so much sense.
The togetherness agreement doesn't have to be some big, lengthy, expensive ordeal. You can start on a date night. We could say, hey, this date night we're going to dedicate to financial matters. All right. And you both have a napkin and you start drafting out a couple of items that are non-negotiable. Hey, no, I cannot leave my business to you. I cannot. I promised it to my sons from previous marriage. Right. But I tell you what I'd like to do is open up another trust for you and put some stock in it and provide you with dividends for the rest of your life. Well, and then she says, well, here's one of my concerns. I've always distrusted that attorney that you're using. Can we look into interviewing another one? Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. Well, so you're having a date night devoted to, these types of topics.
Right. So we're not planning for failure. We're planning for success.
That's it.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a completely different approach, completely different mindset. Now, if I push my napkin across the table and say, here, you better sign this right this moment, then I'm going to blow it all up. But yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. That's it.
And it does impact relationships on an emotional level, especially with adult children. The older the kids are, the more investment they have into whatever finances have been accumulated by their parent. And they have very strong feelings about that. And it will impact the relationship and their willingness to even connect with this new person in their parent's life. If there's this money issue, we have that in Mike's family. There's a huge money issue around a new step parent that has not created problems for us, but for his
my other siblings,
previous step sibling.
I think children need to know. Don't children need to know? Children deserve to know as much as possible. What is it that dad and my stepmother are doing for my future? What is it that they'll leave me? Yeah. Especially when there's a business involved. I don't mean to keep going back to it, but it needs equitable financial planning. My stepmother, I've always called her mom. We're very close. She's been so patient and kind to me in my early years, especially when I was not yet accepting the relationship with my dad. But she waited till she was 72 on Valentine's Day to write my sisters and I a note. Oh, by the way, you three are all co-equal heirs of everything your father left me. Wow. I love you. Happy Valentine's Day. But all those years we wondered, would she get remarried? And if so, what arrangements did dad put into place with her? And then now it just means a lot to us.
Yeah. Ambiguity creates tension. Right? But clarity brings peace. So
for sure.
I love that.
Definitely.
So good. Yeah.
Did you have something you wanted to add to that, Ron?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you were bringing up later life couples, and they have to get to the estate planning more quickly than younger blended family couples, just because the timeline is a little shorter. Did you know the fastest growing group of people on internet dating sites are what we call the silver surfers? That is people that, like myself, are over 50 years of age. That's one of the fastest growing groups of people. And when they recouple, fall in love, they've got stuff. They got houses, they got cars, they got 401ks, they got retirement plans, they got, all kinds of things, and a history, debt history, etc. And they get married. Their kids may be all adults, but the kids are invested. They want to know what's going to happen with all this stuff. So we encourage later life couples to really get to the estate planning stuff sooner, because it's not just about your usness that you're investing in and giving emotional security. You're investing in your children and your grandchildren, and you're communicating, again, safety. That is, we're looking out for you. This big change in our family system, that is, you and I getting married, and we have a new step grandmother in the picture, that's not going to change the financial provision, our care and concern, our looking out and looking after, and college funds for the grandkids. Here's how it's changing, and here's how it's not changing. Communicating that stuff is very important, again, because it ripples emotional safety into the family. And one last thought, this is always tied, money matters are always tied to the family merger as well. So if I, as an adult child, see that my mom is providing for us, showing care and concern by communicating what's happening with the estate, it makes it easier for me to embrace my new stepfather, mom's new husband, however you want to say that. If I think he's up to something and there's secrets and I don't know what's going on, and did mom sign over the house? And then all of a sudden, I don't know how to love him, let alone like him. Right. So the money issues on the financial merger, if you will, is always also tied to the family merger.
Yes. We urge everyone of all ages, not just the silver surfers, but the young folks, look at your beneficiary designations.
Oh, yes.
Is life insurance updated? Are your 401ks still having your ex-spouse on them? How about your IRAs? Check it all out and get those wills done. It's time to get the wills done, your trust, your powers of attorney for finances and healthcare, durable powers of attorney, healthcare directives. Make sure you have a HIPAA release on your POA so that you don't have to violate HIPAA in a crucial time period in the hospital. And then for young couples, guardianship for the children. Yes. My, if you don't have guardians appointed for your minor children, your state will have court-appointed guardians. And who knows what values that they might not share with you. Also, the adoption of children, we can't just, in our wills and our trusts, we cannot just use classes of beneficiary terminology, such as, I hereby bequeath all of my stock accounts to my children, quote, all of my children, because you've left stepchildren out of the equation in almost every state. They don't have rights. So we have to spell that out or adopt them in order to include them in an inheritance.
Wow.
And thank you so much for all of those things, Greg. We should put some bullet points in the show notes of those. Those are important. In fact,
good stuff. And where else will you hear the word bequeathed? I mean, come on.
Yes, I love that.
You don't hear that word every day.
Yeah.
So true.
We have been, some of those things, particularly the beneficiary thought and all of that. A couple of years ago, Greg, we connected with you in Atlanta, and we're in one of your workshops, and you went through several of those things. And now in our pre-blending process, we get to coach lots of couples in the pre-blending process, and we hit Ron's chapter on money in preparing to blend. And we're always asking those questions. And it started because you were asking them. I'm like writing them down like, oh, we need to start asking those questions. So thank you for your contribution on all of it.
People don't think about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We need to think about that.
This is a little, it's personal on my side, so you can cut it if you want, honey. But so my mom had 2 kids in the 60s, and then their dad left, and my dad came along. They got married and had me. And so Dad had 2 stepkids and me at that point. Well, then Dad remarried when I was around 7, and my stepmom brought 2 kids of her own. So then Dad has 4 stepkids and me. Well, then about 18 years ago, my stepmom passed away. And since then, now Dad is remarried, and his new spouse has 3 adult children. Wow. So now Dad has 7 stepkids and me. And then Dad wants me to be the executor of the will, which I kind of get. And I'm like, Dad, you better spell this out, because this is
yes.
He's telling you how patient and loyal and smart you are, you know.
I guess
to be the executor. But the more specific we can be by naming the children in our documents, the better.
Yeah.
The better. Yeah. Name the child and name the exact percentages and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For whatever it's worth, my reflection on your little story there is, you know, a great illustration of life throws you curves. I think one of the biggest reasons people don't plan around finances is they know what's going to happen. They're just sure they know how life's going to roll. Mm-hmm. But life throws you curves, and you just don't know how it's going to happen. The other reflection is, I really think couples, when they look at one another and say, oh, let's not worry about the money. You're going to take care of me. I'm going to take care of you. If you have a stroke, don't worry about it. I'll cover all the bases and take care of your kids. I'm convinced couples are really genuine and sincere when they say that to one another. Yes. The problem is you may find yourself in a position where you're not able to fulfill what you intended. Or it could be that it's left up to, something was missing, like Greg just said, from the will. Therefore, the state is stepping in about your children. And I don't have any power at all, because I'm a step parent to them, and I don't have any authority legally to make decisions. So all of a sudden, you're in a situation where you can't do what you wanted or said you would do. You really need to think it through, put something into force that will fulfill your intentions to spouse and kids.
I so agree with that. And, you know, it's funny. I tell that little story pretty succinctly, but there's a mess underneath.
Oh, it's a huge
mess.
And,
you know, the big thing is there's a lot of ambiguity. Like I've asked, and the response is, and if you're listening to this, Dad, I love you. But the response typically is, hey, I got it taken care of. But underneath, I have no idea what taken care of means.
Right.
And so I feel the weight or the burden to shoulder this, and yet I really don't know what to expect, and I may not know until we get there. I also understand Dad is kind of from a cultural background and a family background where you don't talk about this stuff. Nobody talks about this stuff. We'll find out when we open the envelope someday. And so there's, you know, we're battling some of that as well. But this idea of bringing this to the surface and creating clarity and understanding, boy, that just really brings a sense of peace. And I believe that sense of peace drives relational connection as well. And I want more of that. I don't know if you're listening, I bet you want more of that too.
Yeah, it really is the peace of mind. That's what we're looking for. I mean, when we traveled overseas, this was years and years ago. And, you know, I said, I'm not traveling overseas, both of us on the same plane, without our wills being in place and all of this figured out, because it just made me feel uneasy and uncomfortable, you know, not having that in place, because you don't know. You absolutely don't know what could happen.
And the truth is, if you're listening, riding with each other to the supermarket in the car might actually be more dangerous than getting on a plane to go overseas. So go get this stuff put together.
That's right.
Yeah, don't wait until you're traveling overseas.
Right.
We should have done it earlier.
We should have. Absolutely.
And just take one step at a time. It doesn't need to be done. All of it doesn't need to be done overnight. Don't feel overwhelmed. Take one step forward. Get it. You'll be encouraged. You'll feel better, and then do some more in the next 6 months and the next 12 months and so forth.
That's great advice.
That
Greg.
sounds like an answer to my next question, or partial answer. You know, in so many ways throughout the book, you talk about, you know, unity. Ron, you just said usness and togetherness. What might be one or two fundamental things that couples can focus on when they're building unity around finances? And I love what you just shared there, Greg, was don't get overwhelmed. take it one step at a time. Ron, I'm wondering if you would have something to add.
I think whenever, this is a real pragmatic suggestion, get your heart and your intention out with the first part of your sentence, and then get to the details of whatever needs to come next. I think a mistake that we sometimes make is we're sitting down, we'll go, well, no, you need to keep your checking account separate from my checking account, because I don't think that's a good idea for us to have one account. And in the meantime, your spouse is hearing, oh, you don't trust me. And so by the time all those words come out of your mouth that are details and logistics, what you've lost is the relationship.
Right.
So get your intention out first. So start that sentence with something like, honey, because I'm committed to you till death do us part, because I want us to figure out how to have oneness in our finances, I'm going to make a suggestion that may not sound right, but just hear me out. You've already set it up with what I'm about to say is about togetherness.
Right.
So that any fear, any insecurity that passes through your partner's mind while you're getting out the words, I think you need to keep an account. I need to keep an account. We need to track money that comes in and out from your ex, and that's just a wise thing for us to do in that situation. And what we do need to talk about is, do we have a third account where we're putting all the money in that we pay our mutual bills from? You get to the logistical stuff after you express your heart.
Yes, I love that.
That's really powerful.
Many variations for many different couples. There's no cookie cutter perfect way to merge money. And, the question often comes up, how many pots of money should we have? Well, I bring out the analogy, well, some of the keys on my key chain, I share with my wife. We both have keys to the front door of our house, but she has her own keys to her car, and I have my keys to my car, and she has her keys to her locker at the workout place, and I don't use that. So, but maybe if we worked out together, we'd have one key. But it doesn't make having three sets of keys wrong, and it doesn't make having the one set. I'm using those as an analogy for accounts, numbers of accounts. It doesn't make either one of those wrong or negative meanings to benign money management. Oh, you have three accounts. Well, one day, you'll have one. No, that is not necessarily the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Greg, you just blew up a question that I had, because I thought you were going to tell us the right way to merge our money. Like, I thought there was the right way.
Air quotes around that.
No.
Yeah, you just answered that question, actually.
The question, what's the right way, is loaded. It's preloaded with meaning. And really what people are really asking is, how do I have financial and emotional security? I really think that's what's deeply embedded in that. So again, you want to make sure you get your heart out, your intention out for togetherness right from the start. Make that absolutely clear.
Yes.
You can negotiate the logistics of how many accounts, but you and we're in this together, and I'm stuck to you, and that's my heart. Like, make sure that is absolutely clear as you begin to talk through those details. I do think people sometimes say, I need my own account. You need an account. I'm going to keep this money over here. We're going to keep that separate from this over here. Sometimes that is driven in the beginning by doubt, by distrust. People have been through hard, and they got burned, and the divorce, the spouse left and took everything, and they're never going to let that happen again. I mean, one of the things the research is about women is very evident, is that women in remarriages want to have more control over their positions and their money. They want to have more command over that, in part because they got burned before.
Right.
And so it makes sense that somebody would be a little more possessive, if I could use that word, a little more cautious about how the money's going to be handled. That's okay, as long as you are aware of where that's coming from for you. And if you sense that in your partner, then I think it's a little bit of a, tell me more about that. Get compassionate and curious, we say, about other people's pain. Get compassionate and curious about it. And ask them to teach you about that part of them that is scared to death to combine their financial account with you. Because there's a story behind it, and unless you understand that story, you will not address well their need as it relates to the money issue. So always be attending to the relationship matters so that you can get to the money matters.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying there, Ron, is let's guard against triggering mistrust and fear.
Well done.
At the onset of the conversation, let's just guard against that by just being open and honest with, hey, we're in this together. I want us to figure this out. Here's my intentions. They're good. Now can we collaborate and work through the details once we're solid there?
Yeah, very well said. And if the other person says something and you find yourself getting triggered, and you just go off or blow up or draw a line or turn and walk away, that is a moment where you need to do some serious self-reflection. Because there's a story behind what just happened for you, and you may not even really connect the dots. Oh, wow, this is connected to what happened to me in the past. Now I understand it a little bit better, and I've got to get charge over this so that it doesn't control me the rest of our marriage, because it won't play well over time, right? You learn about yourself, you take another look, and you say, how do I get in charge of this rather than it being in charge of me?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah, I love the way the team over at Vital Smarts that wrote Crucial Conversations, Crucial Accountability. I don't know if you've ever interacted with that, but they talk about mastering your stories. And if you don't master your stories, they're going to master you. Because every time we observe something or we hear somebody say something, we as humans almost can't help but add meaning and motive to what we just saw and what we heard. And so what I love about getting your heart out there first is you're helping clarify the meaning and the motive before you get to the functional pieces of that. And boy, if we could just follow that advice in every area of marriage, not just with our money, man, things would be so much different.
Yes, that's right. That's right. It would.
And of course, in blended families, it's not just about protecting me and guarding myself from being hurt again, but it's about my children. And I'm not sure if your intentions are good towards my kids yet. And so again, making that clear, I want to do right by you. I want to do right by your kids. I want to make sure everyone has what they need, because that will always, trickle out onto providing for the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, there's a section in the book that talks about kind of this above and below the surface challenges. And I wonder if we could talk about, what does that actually mean? What are some above and below the surface challenges when it comes to merging money?
Well, I think we're just talking about that. What Kim pointed out about communicating the desire to care for the other person and their children. That's a below the surface issue. That will totally blow up any logistical conversation you have about money, which is an above the surface issue. So somebody comes to the other person, how many accounts are we going to have? That's above the surface. Somebody comes to you and says, I thought we were going to check in with each other before anybody spends over $500. That's an above the surface money matter issue. What's below that surface is the iceberg of trust or distrust. The iceberg of, am I secure and safe with you, or am I in jeopardy? Are you kind of just chaos walking and you're going to spend money all the time and we're going to wake up one day and I'm going to be broke? Or did you just have a bad day and spend money and you forgot to tell me about it? Like, that's what's below the surface.
Right.
And so, again, this just comes back to growing and maturing as a person. When you catch yourself going, what is going on? First of all, ask what's going on with me, and then get really curious and compassionate about what might be going on with your partner. Chase the below the surface stuff, because until you settle that, and settle sounds like it's over. I mean, everything's in process. I'm in process my whole life. But until you have a good sense of what is the below the surface matters, you will not get good decisions about above the surface money logistics. You really have to go below first.
That makes a lot
of
sense.
One positive way to bring out a below the surface issue in a very non-threatening, positive way I've found is asking couples separately, in an appointment together, but on separate pages. I'd like you to prioritize from 1 to 10, 10 meaning absolutely non-negotiable, gotta have it, my goals into 3 categories. Those top ones, needs, and somewhere in the middle, in the 5 to 7 range, wants, and then from 1 to 4, wishes, or maybe we call them bucket list. And what that does is separately, they bring out their feelings below the surface that comes up to the surface, and they give it a number, and then they switch pages and they compare. Well, I didn't know you felt so strongly about the vacation to St. Thomas. Well, yeah, I lived there when I was a kid. Well, I didn't put that as a 7. I had that down as a bucket list. Okay. Well, now, why did you want to do a prenup? Let's go have a date night.
Yeah.
But tell me, why did you put prenup as a 10? I can tell you why. I lost everything I owned, including my business, in my last marriage. Wow. Obviously, you feel strongly about that. Let's park there and talk more about your business and about what you have committed to your sons or your daughters from a previous marriage. So I think putting a little bit of math and categories can maybe help cut some of the strong emotion out of a discussion.
And also you have 2 things to compare and match to and to talk around by having those 2 lists.
Man, that little description there, Greg, is really powerful for me. There was one very simple sentence in your book that says, finances can be both transparent and separate. And I just thought how interesting that is when I think about the way that you're talking about these 2 separate perspectives. We've got these 2 different orders, and combine that with what you were talking about earlier about the buckets and comparing that to keys as well. Like, there's no formula, there's no right way to actually do all this, but we can be transparent. We can have some separateness and some togetherness as far as functionally speaking. But ultimately, we've got that below the surface unity that's got to undergird all of that.
For sure.
Yeah, really transparent is the below the surface word there for me. Because you and I both know, no secrets. I know what you got. You know what I've got. I know how you use it. We know how the money's going to flow. That's the transparent part. That's where usness comes from. That's where unity comes from. The above the surface word there is separate. There may be funds and money that is yours to manage. And I trust what you're doing with it because you're transparent about that. But I don't necessarily have to have eyes on it or give a thumbs up for anything to ever happen.
Yeah.
It's sort of, again, those 2 things go together.
Yeah,
sure.
The bottom half of the iceberg, as we all know, is so much larger, so much more significant than the part that's above surface. This is just life. We've always got to attend to below the surface stuff first.
Not to can be just a silent tragedy. As far as I was dealing with a couple recently, they were married for second marriage. Each of them had children, were adult children, but he said to me, he confided in me because we had 2 separate data gathering sessions, one with him, one with her. And he said, Greg, this is off the record. Yes, it's off. It's completely confidential. He said, every time I come home from work, I drive up a driveway and park my car in a house that I have no equity. My name isn't on the mortgage. She and her previous husband picked it out. That was their home. And he says, I just feel so conflicted. I feel horrible living in that house. Well, are you willing to talk about it? Oh, no, I can't. So he's just living in this torment. Outwardly, he's happy, with most of their life. But inwardly, there's this huge chunk of iceberg underneath that, could sink the ship.
Wow. He didn't feel at home.
No.
Right.
Not at all.
Right.
That seems like an area where a lot of resentment can start to grow. And that's tragic. Like you said, Greg, this is tragic when money gets in the way of our relationship and causes this kind of pain.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And if he would have brought it up, at this, let's say he would have put as a 9, it's important for me to live in a home that we picked out together. You know what? They might have sold that home at a great time in the market, made a little profit, and felt really good shopping for their own home together. But she didn't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there could have been all kinds of options.
Yeah, it's almost like when we keep the below the surface stuff below the surface, we're actually robbing our partner of the opportunity to respond in a positive way. Sometimes we make assumptions they're going to respond negatively, but what if they don't? Like, then we're robbing ourselves of that deep satisfaction that we're actually looking for.
And we're also robbing ourselves of being authentic with who we really are and what we really think. And you're actually spending a piece of yourself down, and that's not healthy.
I only know all of that because I'm really experienced at it. I've gotten much better.
So I've got a question about the separateness part. Would you say that death benefits from a previous spouse who passed away, would you say that's something that is appropriate to be kept separate, especially if those death benefits are allocated to the biological children of that parent that passed away?
If I could start there, I would say that is a really solid strategy. And if there wasn't a fund that was left to a spouse, having a spouse own life insurance on the other spouse can really be an effective way to bring stability and security to a second, third marriage. So let's say that there is an asset that was left. Yes, putting it in a separate account that you own can really bring stability and the freedom to implement other strategies together, because you already have your future solidified. You feel more open to taking risk with other funds, and you can understand a togetherness agreement that might have cut you out of something because you have your own nest egg, so to speak. If there isn't such an asset that was left to you, let me just go back and say again, having the spouse that has the least amount of assets own their own life insurance policy on their spouse. And it's important that they own it, because what they've done is then created some stability for the future if the worst case scenario occurs.
Yeah.
They've got that security piece.
So ultimately, that creates some equity in a sense of security, financially speaking.
Yes. In fact, Mike, I call life insurance the great equalizer, because pennies or nickels can be spent for a guaranteed dollar, tax-free in the future. And it can be protected in a trust. It can be creditor-proof, divorce-proof. It can be very solid in a financial plan. Wow. So if it's a young couple, especially there aren't a lot of assets, one of the first things that I think could be done to help, bring a security to the relationship is cross-owned life insurance on each other. He owns a policy on her. She owns one on him.
Wow.
It's your own private pension, so to speak. In the case of the worst case, we hope that you live to 100 and that your assets grow and grow and grow and grow together. But if you're in your 20s, 30s, any age, and you don't have a nest egg yet, then making sure you have that right kind, the right amount, by working with your financial advisor, that's an important part of the plan.
Hey guys, what I want our listener to make sure they didn't miss, because Greg is absolutely spot on. I agree 100% with what he just said. What I want our listener to catch is the higher order care and concern and love for your partner is provision. whether you use the dollars you got from your first husband and wife who passed away and left you some money, how you use that money is not as higher order as making sure that there is some provision from money somehow. In other words, the $100,000 that you got that you're going to keep separate and pass on to your children because that was the wish of your former spouse. You don't have to take from that $100,000 to provide for your spouse. You use other money to buy a life insurance policy that does provide for your spouse. You don't have to worry about what bucket it came out of. The point is, do you provide? Do you care for? Do you plan for their well-being? That's what we ought to look at when we say, do you love me?
Right.
It's pretty clear from this behavior that you do.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And at the same time, it needs to be transparent, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
All right. Everybody needs to see it and know how it works and understand it. And I'm providing for my children with this 100 that we got over here, and I'm providing for you with this money over here.
Right.
And there are tools that you can have an attorney draft for you that will take care of both your current spouse, your second marriage, and your biological children later at his or her passing. Trusts like the Qualified Terminable Interest Property Trust, QTIP.
Wow.
It's
a big
Isn't that fun, guys? Mike and Kim, I gotta tell you, hanging around Greg for a while, you're gonna learn all kinds of cool terms. The thing I want our listener to know is I'm not a financial planner. I don't have expertise in all of these areas. The point is, there's things out there that are designed to help you do this well, and most of us just got to ask a question. Right. We just need to. Well, in this case, the book that we've written has pulled all that information together for you. That's a great first step for you to take. But some people will say, well, we feel like in our situation, we need to have a conversation with a certified financial planner or an estate attorney. Yes. And just know they're going to help you find those instruments, those tools that you didn't know anything about.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can make this happen.
So
Absolutely.
they can find their Greg.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
The majority of us haven't heard of a Q-tip. Yeah.
I don't mean to make a commercial out of it, and I know that we haven't talked about this in advance, but anybody that would be listening to this now or in the future, Mike and Kim can connect you to me. We'll have a complimentary hour session of just listening and finding out what's important to you and how can I add another pair of eyes to whatever you've got going. Yeah, so that would be my standing offer for any of your audience.
Oh,
thank you so much, Greg. That's very
because this is confusing.
Absolutely.
We do need help.
What I hear both of you saying is, as couples, we really need to learn how to collaborate around the principles that draw us together and say, okay, how can we actually make that get functional, as opposed to competing over the nickels and the pennies that exist in one pot or another.
That's right. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes back to, how do I love and care for you?
Yes.
And I want to articulate that, express that. I want to make arrangements that care for you if I get hit by a bus. And we're going to do this together, so you're informed and I'm informed.
That's so good.
Yeah, there's no secrets under the surface.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we could switch gears a bit and talk a little bit about ex-spouses, former spouses, and how we negotiate finances with a former spouse. What are some of the challenges and the best practices to kind of work through those challenges? I'll throw that to Ron first.
Well, sometimes it helps if we have a specific scenario, because it's sort of hard to know how to tackle something unless you have one. If you do have one, feel free to throw it at me. But what I would say in general is the overall general working relationship that you have with a former spouse is really important. We talk about these, throw out these little terms about categories of ex-spouses. So if you're fiery foes, right, there's just a lot of conflict, and you've been to court twice and you're just waiting for the next shoe to drop, you're going to go a third time. That's really hard to talk about money, right? Because the climate has made it so volatile. it's a flashpoint. Money becomes a flashpoint. You didn't pay that bill. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. We're going back to court. That is not an environment conducive to having reasonable conversations around money.
Right.
So be working always on the general climate that you have with your former spouse. If, on the other hand, the other end of the continuum is somebody who has a cooperative colleague, we call it, relationship with a former spouse, where you can put aside, each partner puts aside the pain of their collective past, the marriage past, and they focus on being parents and what's required of them now to care for their children. And that sentiment drives their dialogue about time and the schedules and the calendar and money and different and parenting strategies and all that kind of stuff. They're focused on the kids. And so in that environment, you didn't pay that bill becomes, I'm sorry. I thought that was my bad. What do I need to do? All of a sudden things get more, less stressful and more conducive to going somewhere. And yes, you still have tension and it's challenging, but you're focused on a common goal, and that sort of helps you ride the wave and find a way through.
Yeah.
So essentially, the underlying principle of negotiating with a previous spouse around money matters actually is really the same thing as your current spouse, because it's a relationship that needs to center on what is best for the whole.
Yeah.
That's it.
Is that right?
That's it. I mean, that's the guiding relationship principle you want when it comes to co-parenting. Now, that is a challenge.
Absolutely.
And I always acknowledge that for people, because I don't want you to hear preachy in what I just said. Let's just get it out there. This is hard. This is a person you used to be married to, and there's a reason you're no longer married to them. And if you'd have been able to work through it then, you might still be married to them, but you couldn't. And it's hard and difficult. And so two people who couldn't get along when married now have to try to get along when divorced. Yeah, it's not easy. But that's what you're working toward. That's what you're trying to do. And slowly but surely, most co-parent situations gradually gets a little better. And so you're just moving in that direction. And so this money conversation is another piece of that.
I think one area where it gets tricky, both between the former spouses and the current spouses, is child support. So, and it can go both ways, right? If let's, for instance, say the wife is receiving child support from her former spouse to provide for her children, and an expense comes up that she needs to, because it doesn't cover everything, but an expense comes up, we need to buy an instrument or sporting equipment or pay for a camp, whatever. And her current husband is going, well, why is that coming out of our account? Like, that's what your child support is for. And so that conflict can erode. And then it can happen the other way too, where someone's paying out child support, and the former spouse over there asks for some extra money because, again, camp and need some extra. And then their current spouse is like, why are you giving them more money? You pay them money every month. And so then it causes conflict again in the couple relationship. And that is really difficult.
Kim, you're on it. I think one of the issues I've heard the most through the years is a situation where whether the money's coming in or the money's going out, there's an agreement, a divorce agreement, and it stipulates X, Y, and Z, but then a partner says, yeah, I'll go ahead and help pay for that medical bill or pay for that travel baseball team, whatever it is. And the new spouse is going, whoa. You're going above and beyond what you're required to do. Why are you doing that? It feels like, here's the below the surface issue. What does that feel like to you? It feels like they're accommodating their ex. Right. And why are they accommodating their ex? Because they still love them? Because there's still some fire going on below the surface? Like, that's where the insecurity grows. Right? And so those are sticky situations, because there's a part of me that wants to say, hey, look, sometimes going above and beyond is a way of helping to move toward a cooperative colleague environment. Not that you're buying them off, but what you're saying is, I'm willing to go the second mile, and I'm hoping that you will as well. And it sort of sets a good tone for the co-parent relationship. So there's a strategy behind going above and beyond. Now, if you always do that, repetitively, you never say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that, then there's something else going on. You're afraid of something. You're the one who's stuck. You're the one who's, concerned for whatever reason that you have to do this. And that is going to be a problem in your current marriage. I think you've got to, again, look in the mirror. What's going on with me? Why am I doing this? What's this all about? By the way, the answer here, or one of the guiding principles, I should say, is always check in with your spouse. Make a collective decision as husband and wife before you go above and beyond. Because if you collectively decide, all right, this time we're going to go above and beyond, and we know it's a sacrifice, then you're still managing your usness. You're still protecting your marriage before you make the sacrifice. So it's the unilateral decision without coming together as husband and wife that gets people into trouble.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I so agree with that. I think that's probably one of those scenarios where we run into time and time again with different couples. There's, for some reason, this urgency that soon as that question gets asked by my former spouse, I've got to give an answer, whether it's on text or via phone or whatever it is. And we talk with couples all the time. It's a very rare thing that a decision like that has to be made right in the moment. And all of us can say, hey, thanks for sharing that. I know it's really important to buy Johnny a new saxophone. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm not sure I can give you an answer to that right now, but I'll get back to you next week. We can all do that so that we can preserve that usness with each other.
And then we can talk about other options. Maybe Johnny can rent a saxophone or borrow one from the school. Maybe we don't have to fork out a big bill. But yeah, it causes, and another under the surface emotion that can happen to that new spouse is, hey, we can't even afford to go on vacation, but you're just shelling out money to your ex. It's taking money away from our family to go over and above. And they feel, like they're being left in the dust or being neglected. And again, that emotional part of money.
My highest priority is that vacation in St. Thomas, right, Greg? Not a saxophone for little Johnny. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for talking us through some of that, Ron. We know there's no easy answer to the challenges that come with a former spouse, which is why we have a whole library of episodes around that, as do you on Family Life Blended.
Exactly. Guys, what a great conversation. Thank you so much for spending time with us. One of our first pieces of advice, anybody who's listening that resonates with any of this, our first piece of advice is go get this book, The Smart Step Family Guide to Financial Planning. We're going to put a link to that in the show notes.
Fantastic.
And I wonder, as we kind of bring the conversation to a close, if you could just think of the first one or two things that if a couple's feeling stuck around money and they're feeling that and they want to do something this week, what would be the one or two things that you might recommend that they go do this week to start getting unstuck? Greg, what would you say to that couple?
I would say make it an appointment with a referred, trusted advisor. Seek out from your closest couples that have, let's say, have some success. You can see that they're doing well in this area, and ask them, who can we sit down that'll listen to our blended family challenges and begin that process. And if it was not a relational thing like that, I would say, so a strategic first step would be wills, trusts, powers of attorney, and guardianship for children. In other words, go see an attorney for basic estate planning documents.
That's so good.
And I'm going to add to that because I'm going to go the other direction, because what he just talked about are above the surface money management issues. And there's been so many times in my life where I just need somebody to tell me how this stuff works and I don't understand it. And that's exactly what you need to do, like Greg just said. But if, as you're reflecting on why are we stuck, you go, there's so many emotional issues in this, relational issues. There's a trust going on. Okay, so that's the below the surface stuff. Likewise, you want to find somebody who's going to help you be able to do that. And I'll just tell your listeners, if they don't know, I've been training therapists now for a number of years, and we've got a list of people.
Yep.
Recognized Smart Step Family Therapy providers on my website, smartstepfamilies.com. They can go and they can hopefully find somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Many people work virtually with people within their state.
Yes.
So that's the below the surface relational stuff that you got to address before. You could start addressing some of the above the surface money management issues, but I just am a firm believer you won't really get really good answers for above the surface until you sort of resolve the stuff below the surface.
So good.
Absolutely. And we will put a link in the show notes again to the book. We'll also link over to that page you're talking about there, Ron. I know exactly the one you're talking about that goes through those preferred providers, helps you search by state. It's really easy to use, and it's a great opportunity to share that. Greg, where can people find you?
They could find me on my email at pettysgreg@gmail.com. That'd be pettysgreg@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Greg, Ron, what a privilege to connect with each of you. Thank you for the work and the effort that you put in along with David to produce this really unique resource for couples in an area that matters so much.
So
thank you.
needed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you for being here on
Privilege.
Blended Family Breakthrough. It's a real privilege.
Yes. Thank you for
Thank you.
all you bring.
Mm-hmm.
So amazing.
All right, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, what a great discussion and a privilege to have both Greg and Ron here with us today.
Absolutely.
You know, I was kind of surprised to hear that 75% of couples don't talk about finances prior to marriage, but then I kind of realized that you and I didn't really talk about it that much either, honey.
No, that's
And
true.
maybe we could have avoided some of the uncertainty and the conflict that we've had around money if we had just taken the time to do that.
Absolutely. I think we figured we didn't really have much, so there wasn't much to talk about at that point. But the truth is we both owned houses and had some consumer debt when we got together that we really didn't discuss much.
That's right.
And even if we hadn't owned our homes or had that debt, we still would have benefited from proactively strategizing our plan for finances within our relationship and our family.
For sure. Yeah. You know, we've had too much stress and too many fights about money over the past couple of decades, and I wish we would have been more collaborative about it, honestly.
Absolutely.
So if you're listening and you realize that you need some support in this area of finances, we're going to include Greg's email in the show notes, and we encourage you to reach out to him. Whether you're just thinking of getting married or you've been under the same roof for years, it's probably time to create a financial plan together. Or you're always welcome to schedule a free coaching call with us, and we'll help you to find the best next steps for you. Whatever you do, don't let another day go by just trying to gut it out without support and without a plan. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.
Does it ever feel like people just don't get how tough it is to blend a family? What if you could experience a community that's all about healthy support, guidance, and practical strategies that help you thrive in your blended family? Well, now you can. Blending Together is a supportive community for blended family couples just like you.
We've educated and supported hundreds of couples navigating the unique challenges of blended family life. Now we're inviting you to join our community and experience the transformation that awaits you. Blending Together is not just another community. It's a place where you'll find practical, real-life strategies for building unity as a couple,
Creating more connection as a family,
experiencing partnership in parenting,
and even dealing with that difficult ex.
Blending Together is a safe, growth-focused space where you'll get to connect with us and maybe more importantly, with other blended family couples who truly understand what you're going through. Along the way, you'll discover practical tools, guidance, and hope that empower you to find a future full of confidence and connection.
When you join Blending Together, you'll gain access to a variety of resources like our private Facebook group and online learning platform, monthly coaching meetings, monthly Q&As, and you'll even get to vote on the content for our monthly workshops.
Blending a family can often leave couples feeling alone or isolated, and quality support can sometimes be expensive and hard to find. That's why we're offering you access to all of this at a super low monthly rate, because every blended family deserves the opportunity to thrive regardless of their budget.
So scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes and click the link to join us in the Blending Together community and meet other couples just like you in our upcoming community meeting. Plus, when you join before the end of the month, you'll gain access to our brand new bonus mini course that will help you make quick headway. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We can't wait to meet you inside Blending Together. Just click the link all the way at the bottom of the show notes to get started.
We'll see you there.